I knew things were going sideways when our biggest legacy client, Tarek and Bell, asked if the woman with the steady voice was still with us. That was me. The woman, the voice. Not Janet, not Miss Kessler, not even a damn title. Just a steady voice. I'd spent 7 years quietly keeping their chaos from spilling over into lawsuits and lost accounts, and now I was reduced to a ghost in their inbox. Triple Scale didn't run because of flashy dashboards or Brenton's idiotic slide decks. It ran because I made sure fires never started in the first place. My job wasn't sexy. No all-hands applause. No promotions with company-branded North Face vests. Just long hours, careful flags, escalations handled before they exploded, and client relationships that had weathered mergers, deaths, even one midlife crisis that involved a client founder buying a llama farm in Vermont. I was the oil in the machine, invisible until the engine coughed. At the office, I was known as the human firewall. Not exactly a compliment, but not an insult either. It meant I kept disasters from happening, which ironically meant no one ever saw me work. My systems ran so smoothly that people assumed the problems had solved themselves, and I let them believe it, until they didn't. By the way, if you've made it this far and you're listening while ignoring your inbox or microwaving last night's Chinese takeout, do me a quick favor, click subscribe. Like seriously. It keeps stories like this flowing and motivates our crew to keep digging up corporate train wrecks that make yours feel tame. Toss in a like too, it's cheaper than therapy and keeps our coffee fund alive. Anyway, back to the collapse. The comfort zone was never comfortable. Not really, it was just quiet. Every morning I arrived 15 minutes early and left 20 minutes late, the way my father taught me. I drank the same coffee blend for 6 years. I knew every admin's birthday. I could recite the CRO's travel schedule from memory. I'd trained 3 entire teams without ever being officially listed as their manager. And when someone in C-suite needed something fixed, but didn't want their name on it, I got a Slack message with a "Hey, quick question." That meant, "Janet, fix this before it ends my quarter." But I didn't mind, not really. I liked being the ghost asset. There was freedom in invisibility. No one breathing down your neck, no politics to play, no performative meetings about synergy. I built compliance matrices and risk mitigation branches like they were crossword puzzles. I customized outreach flows based on psychological profiling. Not that anyone asked how I did it, they just liked the results. My work was clean, silent, invisible, until Brenton arrived. He showed up with hair too perfect and shoes too loud, like a man who still thought LinkedIn bios were personality traits. Within a week, he was calling entire departments cost sinks and talking about leaner optics. I knew he'd zero in on me eventually. Ghosts don't look good on spreadsheets. But before the storm came the stillness. That's what no one ever tells you about a downfall. It starts in whispers. In budget reviews that no longer require your presence. In emails you're CC'd on instead of directly addressed. In your calendar slowly draining itself of relevance. I had built the entire retention infrastructure for Triple Scale's legacy clients, 20% of the client base, but 60% of the profit margin. Because I didn't make noise, no one remembered who did it. The retention reports that Brenton used to charm the board, my dashboards. The continuity system that got us through 3 reorganizations without churn, mine. The soft escalation protocols that smoothed over every panic call from a client on the verge of leaving, also mine. But ghosts don't demand credit, ghosts just haunt. And as I'd soon learn, they also write their own contracts. I didn't make much noise when I joined as a contractor 7 years ago, but I brought my own paperwork. And buried inside it, just below the boilerplate language everyone skips, was something very small, very quiet, very sharp. Clause 7.4d, but we'll get to that. Brenton Carlton III, yes, the third, because of course he was, came in on a Wednesday with teeth too white and a voice that carried like a sermon at a tech conference. His LinkedIn photo had him in a blazer and boat shoes, standing on a yacht deck like he'd just finished solving world hunger via pivot table. He shook hands like he'd read a guide on dominance grip, and made eye contact like he thought blinking was a sign of weakness. The rumors started before he even cleared HR onboarding. Harvard MBA, ex-McKinsey, turnaround expert. He was brought in to modernize workflows and optimize account longevity. Corporate speak for cut heads and install dashboards nobody asked for. His first act as VP of Client Ops was to gut the legacy escalation flow. The one I built. Too manual, he said, not agile. I sat across the conference table while he clicked through a 10-slide PowerPoint that had more emojis than data. Our clients want speed, not stability, he insisted, grinning like someone who'd never handled a client crying on the phone because a compliance audit went sideways during a divorce. Slide 7, I'll never forget, had a flowchart titled Janet's Current Mess in bright Comic Sans font. Real professional stuff. And there, in front of 2 directors, a crow, and a junior intern who couldn't stop giggling, Brenton waved in my direction like he was pointing at an obsolete printer and said, "We're sunsetting these soft-cost sinkholes." Then he smiled wider like a man proud of his own punchline. "Your contribution is replaceable, darling, darling." The room went silent, the kind of silence that dries out your tongue. I felt every eye flick toward me, unsure whether to laugh, grimace, or start packing their desk in solidarity. I just stared at him for a beat too long, then smiled, tight-lipped. No teeth. The same smile I'd given auditors, lawyers, and one hysterical CEO's mistress, who once demanded we delete all the bad PR from the cloud. Brenton moved on like nothing happened, like he hadn't just stepped on a landmine he couldn't see. That was the thing about men like him. They didn't know the difference between quiet and empty. After the meeting, no one said anything to me directly, but Karen from legal slipped me a post-it with a frowny face and whine, scribbled on it. And James, the guy from IT, walked past my desk later and whispered, "Replaceable my ass." He couldn't reboot his ethics if we drew him a diagram. Still, officially nothing happened. No reprimand, no HR follow-up, no email apology. That's the way it goes when the offense wears a suit and the insult doesn't leave a bruise. Brenton didn't just want to cut costs, he wanted to be seen cutting costs. And what better symbol than a quiet woman in her 40s, making more than some junior execs, who refused to brand herself with hustle hashtags or attend vision boarding brunches with the rest of the upwardly mobile crowd? He started moving fast after that. Reorg memos, a culture realignment initiative, Slack channels renamed with words like synergy and impact. He posted a picture of himself on LinkedIn in front of a whiteboard filled with gibberish, captioned, "Leading change isn't easy, but someone has to do it." #transformation #leadership matters. He never tagged the team. He never knew the team. He didn't understand that the legacy clients weren't just line items on a spreadsheet. They were human powder kegs that only stayed calm because someone like me made sure they never saw the sparks. And now I was labeled replaceable. A soft cost. He thought that'd be the end of the story. He didn't know the story had a clause. It happened on a Friday, because of course it did. All corporate assassinations happen on Fridays. HR likes the optics, gives the blood time to dry over the weekend. The invite hit my inbox that morning. All hands strategic vision update mandatory attendance. 11 o'clock a.m. sharp, third floor conference room, which hadn't seen that much foot traffic since they catered a waffle bar for Administrative Professionals Day. Brenton stood at the front in his standard uniform, shirt unbuttoned just enough to suggest a workout routine, hair gelled into submission, holding a wireless clicker like it was a damn lightsaber. He opened with his favorite buzzwords: agility, scalability, modernization. Then he shifted gears. "We've identified a few areas where resource optimization can help us realign with the company's growth curve," he said, and there it was, the verbal anesthesia. The word strategic consolidation hit the room like a gas leak. Subtle, suffocating. My name appeared on slide 4, just beneath a bullet point labeled Operational Streamlining Phase 1. No warning, no call, no private meeting. Just my role, reduced to a font-sized 12 casualty in a quarterly war against overhead. "We appreciate Janet's years of service," Brenton said, voice syrupy. "Her contributions have been noted and valued, but as we pivot toward a more nimble structure, some legacy positions are no longer aligned with our forward trajectory." Forward trajectory. He talked like he was launching a Mars rover, not gutting a system he barely understood. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I just nodded once, pushed my chair back, and walked out of the room while he was still talking. That was my final act of rebellion, stealing his climax. No dramatic exit, no tears, no stapler-throwing theatrics. Just gone, back at my desk. I packed slowly, not because I was sentimental, but because I was deliberate. Each drawer was its own little ritual. Post-it notes, backup drives, a half-dead succulent Karen from accounting gave me when her divorce finalized. I left behind the branded fleece I never wore and the mousebed with the company logo that never stopped peeling. No goodbyes, no awkward hugs, no keep-in-touch nonsense. The people who mattered already had my number. The rest. Remember me in 2 weeks when something broke and no one could find the process doc. Spoiler, it was embedded in a system no one knew existed. I took the elevator to the second floor to legal, dropped a manila folder on the assistant's desk. She looked up, startled. "Janet, did you need to schedule something?" "Nope, just delivering something." Inside the folder, a single-page document. End of engagement notice clause 7.4D with my signature. Time-stamped? No dramatic language, just precision. That clause, quietly inserted when I renegotiated my consulting terms 4 years back, was the legal equivalent of a bear trap in silk gloves. Most people never noticed it. Most people never read past the indemnity clause. But 7.4D was a trigger clause tied to my termination. It didn't punish, it reclaimed. Upon termination, not for cause, all operational license rights for the systems I had architected reverted to my consulting LLC. Meaning, they no longer had permission to use the very infrastructure they were still blindly operating under. Not the escalation trees, not the continuity models, not the CRM flags, not even the custom audit alert macros baked into their internal dashboards. They fired me at 11:08 a.m. By 11:12, they were already in breach, and they didn't even know it yet. I walked out of triple scale with my purse on one shoulder and 7 years of quiet power tucked neatly in a folder behind me. No one cheered. No one stopped me. Still waters, they say, run deep. They just don't mention the undertow. Week 1, the cracks didn't look like cracks. They looked like quirks, glitches, even. A missed callback, a delayed report. Client email marked urgent sitting unread for 16 hours because no one knew it was tagged internally as high risk. Brenton brushed it off, clapped his hands at stand up, and said we were getting leaner, more responsive. He said it twice. That's how you know it's a lie. He even launched a new Slack channel, #ClientChampions, with a trophy emoji. Interns were added, directors weren't. Account A, Tarek and Bell, went quiet first. No announcement, just radio silence. This is a client that used to flood our inboxes with fussy compliance questions like a toddler asking why on loop. Now, nothing. That might seem like a break until you realize silence from a $12 million client is the business equivalent of a flat line on the heart monitor. Brenton said they're probably consolidating vendors. Happens. Then account B piped up. They submitted a formal complaint about an escalation mismatch. That's polite corporate lingo for we got passed to someone who didn't know what the hell they were doing. Apparently, an intern, fresh out of a summer program and still listing their GPA in their email signature, was put in charge of navigating a third-party regulatory audit. She sent the client the wrong document. Twice. Account B flagged it. Brenton shrugged. They'll get over it, he said. We comp their license fee this quarter and send a fruit basket. A fruit basket to a compliance firm in Q4, during reporting season. Account C went nuclear. They sent a letter, not an email, not a Slack ping, a letter on actual letterhead, with legal phrasing and terrifying spacing. It questioned whether Triple Scale was still in compliance with agreed-upon continuity protocols per contractual section 6.3. That was lawyer speak for. Did you just screw us out of our indemnity shield by firing the only person holding the glue together? Because that clause, it tied their indemnity to systems I personally managed. And now I wasn't there. And now they were exposed. That's when the CFO started showing up to meetings she usually ghosted. She had a look on her face like someone just told her the vault password was written in invisible ink. Brenton tried to stay cocky, standing a little taller, gesturing a little wider, saying things like we're adapting and there's always turbulence in transition. But you could smell it, that quiet rot behind the drywall. You know it when you've been in the game long enough. More calls started coming in. Clients asking questions that didn't sound like questions. When did Janet transition off our portfolio? Who is our new continuity partner? Can you confirm that Tier 3 exceptions are still being reviewed against our customized flags? Brenton would wave his hand and say, we've got it handled. Then he'd throw some poor project manager under the bus and ask them to circle back ASAP. Meanwhile, the systems I had built, the ones they thought were plug-and-play, started misfiring. Alerts routed to dead inboxes. Client priority scores defaulted to baseline. Risk tag on a politically exposed client never fired when it should have, and legal had to clean it up retroactively. Quiet chaos. They tried to patch it all up like a leaky boat with band-aids. Brenton reassigned interns, hired a freelance workflow consultant off Fiverr, told his team to reverse engineer Janet's logic and rebuild the architecture. Good luck with that. The architecture wasn't a logic tree you could diagram on a whiteboard. It was intuition shaped by data, systems coded with nuance, and decisions designed to never need escalation. Half of it was behavioral patterning. The other half, muscle memory and a deeply personal trust model baked into every tag, escalation route, and post-call audit log. One afternoon, 2 weeks in, Brenton called a standing meeting and announced, we've initiated a redundancy protocol. We'll map Janet's system in full by next week. IT manager just stared at him. You can't map what you never had access to. Her systems were permission-gated through her LLC's license. Brenton blinked, we own it. The IT manager looked down at the table, not according to the clause. The room went silent, again. 3 weeks, that's all it took. 3 weeks of me being gone and their smooth, silent machine was coughing blood. They hadn't hit panic yet, but you could smell the sweat. And I was still silent, still gone, letting the claws do the talking. Brenton was already sweating through his shirt when the CFO cornered him outside the glass conference room, voice clipped and eyes blazing. I just got off the call with Tarek and Bell. They've paused Q1 renewal pending. Leadership clarification. Want to tell me what that means, Brenton? He fumbled for words. It's a posture move. They're bluffing, playing hardball for better terms. Hardball, she said, leaning in like she was smelling for lies. They specifically cited continuity failure tied to infrastructure licensing. That sound like bluffing to you? Brenton shifted his weight. Janet was just admin. She handled process stuff. Emails, checklists. The crow, who had been silent by the glass door, stepped in like he'd been waiting for the perfect line. Those accounts were coded legacy exempt. That's not something you slap on with a checklist. That's a risk tiering model. Hers. Brenton opened his mouth and closed it. His jaw moved like he was chewing air. The CFO folded her arms. We were guaranteed 96% renewal stability on legacy clients. You signed off on that. I signed off based on your projections. So either Janet was more than just admin or you cooked those forecasts. That last word hit like a cold slap. Cooked his weight in corporate finance. It's not metaphor anymore. It's the kind of word that makes lawyers start reading every contract like it's the Dead Sea Scrolls. And speaking of lawyers, legal had already started circling. It began with a polite little ping from compliance. Can someone verify when Janet's systems were migrated under central infrastructure? Nobody replied, because nobody knew. Then came a second, less polite email. Please confirm current licensing rights attached to all client continuity protocols, specifically those involving third-party architecture. Brenton called a huddle with legal. It did not go well. They brought out my contract, still warm from the copier, highlighted in several places. The junior associate read aloud clause 7.4D and paused. I don't remember seeing this during the vendor agreement review, he said. That's because she wasn't a vendor. She was a contractor, the general counsel corrected. She rolled into that status from a fixed-term agreement in 2020. Nobody updated the review tags, so she maintained IP rights on the client-side continuity framework, the associate asked. Yes, and we terminated her. Yes, a beat. So we're operating without a license? The general counsel didn't answer. She just closed the folder and rubbed her eyes. The problem wasn't just legal now, it was operational. Brenton's team had been using my systems daily, oblivious to the fact that the moment they cut me loose, the underlying license to use those workflows evaporated like mist. Every alert, every escalation flow, every compliance route, gone. That's when the CRO pulled out the nuclear truth. We didn't just lose Janet. We lost the infrastructure we were selling as a service. That's what the clients are reacting to. They're not just mad, they're exposed. Triple Scale had promised high-tier clients something most firms couldn't: continuity without interruption, compliance without escalation, retention without panic. And I was the quiet architect behind all of it. My system was never supposed to be pretty. It was supposed to be invisible, unbreakable, silent. Now the silence was deafening, not just from clients, but inside the walls. IT didn't know what to do. Sales started holding onto contracts like they were radioactive. Finance froze 2 funding initiatives. One director even floated, should we reach out to her? Brenton, still trying to hold the line, muttered, she'll want too much. The CFO didn't even look up from her screen. You already gave her too much. She just waited for us to notice. At that moment, legal circled something in the contract. Something they'd missed the first time. Not a paragraph, a sentence. A single clause in tiny print that made the GC's face go pale. She leaned back slowly, looked at Brenton like he'd just shot a hole in the hull of a submarine. I need to talk to the CEO, she said. That was the moment it shifted. This wasn't a mistake anymore. This was a catastrophic breach of internal risk architecture. And the person who could fix it, she was gone. With the license, with the leverage, and she hadn't said a single word. The call came at 8:03 a.m. on a Tuesday because nothing good starts before coffee. My phone buzzed twice, and I let it go to voicemail the first time. Second time, I picked up, partially out of curiosity, mostly because I wanted to hear the desperation in his voice. Janet, hi, it's Marshall Keene, the CEO of Triple Scale, the man who once walked right past me in the break room every morning like I was part of the countertop. He started light, like we were old friends catching up over brunch. So, we've been reviewing some things and, it looks like you've had a tremendous impact on our systems. I'll be honest, we didn't fully appreciate the depth of your operational footprint. Operational footprint. I nearly laughed. That's what you call a legacy system someone gutted without reading the blueprints. That's what you say when your building's on fire and you finally realize the sprinkler system was custom-coded by the woman you fired. He kept going. We're very interested in bringing you back. Not just as a consultant, this would be a strategic advisory role. Competitive retainer, full access, autonomy. Whatever you need to feel respected, that's important to us. Is it? I said, calm, level, not even mad, just curious. A pause, then a chuckle. Look, I know Brenton's delivery was a little aggressive. We've spoken about that, but let's not get caught up in the past. We need solutions. You're a solutions person. I waited a beat. You read the clause? I asked. Another pause, longer this time. We have legal reviewing it. There's some ambiguity. Ah, there it was, the bluff. He thought I'd come crawling back for a paycheck and a pat on the head, grateful for the second chance. He didn't realize I'd already had my second, third, and fourth chances all behind the scenes, making everyone look smarter than they were. I'd been the duct tape holding the plane together mid-flight. Now that I was gone, the wings were starting to rattle. You don't need to bluff, Marshall, I said. I'm happy to talk. Just bring legal. Silence on his end. Real silence. The kind that tastes like cold metal. I'm not bluffing, he said finally, though his voice had lost its sheen. Janet, we're prepared to take legal action if you're obstructing access to systems we developed in-house. We can make a case for breach of loyalty. Breach of loyalty. That one landed awkwardly, like a punch thrown by someone already falling backward. Marshall, I said, you can't breach what you never acknowledged. I let that sit there. You terminated my role, not for cause. I followed the exit clause. Clause 7.4D, if you're having trouble remembering. The operational license was always owned by my LLC. You knew that when you signed the updated contract in 2020, or maybe you didn't read it. Either way, that's not my fault. Another long pause. What are you looking for? He finally asked. That question wasn't friendly. It was frightened, not because I was angry, but because I wasn't. Because the tone in my voice hadn't risen an inch. Because I hadn't called a lawyer or the press or even a single client. Because I didn't need to. I'm looking for a meeting, I said. You, me, legal, I'll bring my terms, you'll bring your checkbook. Still, he tried one more jab, like a man drowning but refusing the lifeline unless it came with a compliment. You know, this doesn't look great from the outside. There are people saying you planned this, that you set us up. I did, I said flatly. I set up systems that worked. You're the one who pulled the plug. He didn't have a comeback for that. I'll have my assistant coordinate, I said, and ended the call. Then I stood up, smoothed the front of my blouse, tucked a flash drive into my leather portfolio, and smiled, not out of vengeance, out of preparation. The boardroom was colder than I remembered. Maybe it was the AC, maybe it was the stairs. You could practically hear the anxiety humming beneath the designer suits and zero sugar coffees. Leather chairs lined the table like obedient dogs. Triple scale logo flickered on the far screen, trying its best to pretend things were normal. They weren't. I walked in precisely at 9:00 a.m., not a second early, not a second late. Hair pinned up, navy blazer crisp, leather portfolio tucked under my arm like a scalpel. I didn't come for conversation. I came for surgery. Marshall sat at the head of the table, flanked by Brenton on his left, visibly sweating through a $700 shirt. Legal on his right, a four-person phalanx of suits already shuffling through contracts with that desperate paper rustle that screams, please don't be real, please don't be real. I didn't sit. I didn't ask if they were ready. I just stepped forward, opened the portfolio, and slid a single document across the polished walnut table. Original contract, I said. Executed March 2020. Section 7.4D is highlighted. One of the lawyers snatched it like it was radioactive. His eyes locked on the page, and as he read, the color drained out of his face like someone had pulled the plug. He passed it to the GC, who took her time. She read it once, then again. Her lips moved as she traced the clause. Brenton leaned forward, trying to break the silence. This is not enforceable, right? I mean, surely this is just language that wasn't properly. The GC cut him off, voice low. It's enforceable. That's when the CEO finally broke his frozen CEO face and leaned in. Walk us through it, Janet. No emotion. Just that same performative calm he used in earnings calls. He didn't ask because he respected me. He asked because he had no idea how much trouble he was actually in, and the lawyers were too afraid to tell him directly. So I did. In 2020, my contractor role was renewed and rolled into a consulting LLC structure. I inserted a license clause. It was buried in the IP rider that no one on your side read. Clause 7.4D states that if the agreement is terminated not for cause, all rights to use any infrastructure, physical, digital, procedural, revert to the license holder, which is my LLC. Marshall squinted. Infrastructure meaning everything I built, I replied. Escalation flows, the retention models, the client scoring logic, the call audit macros, the continuity tagging system, the CRM overlays, every single operational component tied to Tier 1 legacy clients. Silence, then, but we've been using it, Brenton stammered. It's been business as usual, which places you in violation, I said calmly. Every hour since my termination, you've been operating on systems you no longer have legal access to. That's not just a contractual issue. That's a liability to every single client who assumed their compliance shielding was still in place. Legal nodded grimly. The clause is airtight, one of them said. No ambiguity. And she filed her end of engagement with timestamp notice. The trigger activated the moment her badge was deactivated. Brenton turned bright red, then ghostly pale in the span of 5 seconds. I thought she was just replaceable, I offered. Looking straight at him, his mouth opened, closed, nothing came out. Marshall ran a hand through his thinning hair and stared at the wall like it might have a better answer than the humans in the room. How much damage are we talking? He asked the room, not really wanting the answer. The GC didn't respond. She just flipped the contract shut and looked at me because she already knew. I wasn't here for drama. I was here for the terms. The lawyer's voice cut through the silence like a scalpel. In the event of premature termination not for cause, she read, steady and deliberate, exclusive use rights revert immediately to the consultant's LLC, and renegotiation must occur under the consultant's terms prior to any continued operational use of said infrastructure. She looked up slowly, her gaze making a slow lap around the boardroom, like she was checking to see who understood English and who needed it in smaller words. Nobody spoke. Then Brenton, sweet, dumb Brenton, leaned forward, voice cracking like a rusted hinge. That's not enforceable, right? The GC turned to him like she was observing something pitiful in a Petri dish. It's enforceable. You signed off on it. He blinked. I didn't. You initialed the contract addendum yourself in April 2020, she said. You were acting director of operations at the time. That granted you signatory power for all contractor renewals. I thought it was boilerplate. Wasn't? She didn't raise her voice. Didn't have to. The calmness in her tone made it worse. Like she'd accepted they were already halfway into the fall, and now the only thing left was deciding whether they hit concrete or the ocean. Marshall swiveled in his chair toward me, looking every bit like a man calculating his own obituary. "So what does this mean?" he asked, barely above a whisper. I folded my hands. No need to perform, no need to gloat. Means every continuity system tied to client retention, every escalation flow, every risk protocol, every compliance overlay has been in illegal use for 26 business days. Clients have relied on systems you no longer had a legal right to operate, which means their indemnity protections are compromised. Which means your indemnity protections are compromised. Jesus Christ, the CFO muttered, burying her face in her palms. I turned to the GC. Have you notified your insurer about this yet? That got her attention. Her eyes darted to Marshall. We haven't formally disclosed the risk profile change. In other words, I said, you're out of compliance with your own liability coverage. If a client files breach over continuity, or if an audit exposes the lapse, Triple Scale won't just eat contract losses. You'll eat the legal exposure too. Marshall looked like someone had just explained gravity to him for the first time. Brenton sat very still, trying not to be noticed, as if shrinking would somehow undo the signature he'd already given. The CRO cleared her throat and said, "We've already lost 3 Tier 1 clients this quarter. 2 more are ghosting meetings. And they'll keep dropping," I added, "because they don't trust systems held together by duct tape and denial." Another lawyer, one who hadn't said a word until now, spoke up, voice quiet but certain. "If we get sued for breach and can't prove continuity integrity, it could trigger clawback clauses in at least 4 of our contracts." "What's the ballpark?" Marshall asked. 7 figures, at minimum." The CFO exhaled hard. Brenton's chair creaked as he shifted like a man realizing there was no exit behind him. Just a wall. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. He wasn't the point anymore. He was just the match. The fire, on the other hand, was very much alive and very much in the room. I took a slow breath and opened a second folder from my portfolio. Inside, a single typed page, double-spaced with calm black ink. "My terms," I said. "We renegotiate under Clause 7.4D. Right now, or the systems remain dark. And I start notifying clients that I can no longer vouch for the structural integrity of what they're paying for." Marshall didn't ask to read it. He just stared at the paper like it was a ransom note written in blood. Because it was, in a way, just a very quiet, very polite one. Marshall read the first line of the page, just one. His lips moved like he was mouthing a prayer in reverse. "Retroactive pay?" he asked, blinking slowly. "Starting from the day I was terminated," I said. "At the consulting rate previously agreed upon during the 2020 restructure, backdated through today." He skimmed down a few lines, his eyes narrowed. 3 times the monthly retainer?" "Yes, going forward," I replied. "I'll be reinstated as an external partner, not staff. Independent, contracted, and fireproof." Silence. His hand hovered over the paper like it might bite. "And this one?" he asked, tapping the last bullet point like it was a misprint. "Brenton is removed from all client-facing oversight," I said, voice flat. "Immediately. He retains a title if you like. But he doesn't go near my systems, not as a user, not as a sign-off, not as a tourist." The air in the room thickened. Legal wasn't blinking. The CFO looked like she wanted to clap. The CRO looked like she already had on the inside. Brenton gave a strangled half-laugh. "You can't be serious. You're blackmailing the company." "No," I said calmly, "I'm protecting my IP. What you're experiencing is called leverage. You'd know that if you'd ever built something worth protecting." Marshall didn't move. He looked at me, then at the paper, then at Brenton, back to the paper. Then the lawyer spoke, not loudly, not dramatically, just one sentence measured like a final breath before a plunge. Pay her whatever she wants." Marshall didn't argue, he just nodded once. It wasn't defeat, it was surrender. The kind that happens when someone realizes they're not in a negotiation, they're in a correction. A legal, financial, and operational correction. Across the room, Brenton opened his mouth to protest. But I turned to him first, just for a moment, just to deliver the final truth. "I was replaceable," I said softly. "You weren't." He blinked. I left the contract on the table and walked out before he could answer. Not because I was in a rush. Because some exits deserve silence. Let the doors whisper closed behind me. Let the team pick up the pieces. Let the new terms speak louder than I ever had to. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.